you're watching Half Asian Tarot Queen. I'm Elisa. Thanks for joining. I'm going to Radiant Wise Spirit Tarot to start. When I pulled the deck out, at the bottom we have the Eight of Cups followed by the World. So it's like kind of suggesting like moving on from maybe a situation that you've invested a lot in, but it's not really serving your highest good anymore, and so it's kind of time. It's kind of time to move on. So that's kind of paving the way for a new era, which is interesting because I think there's been a lot of that going around with the New Year's readings that have been coming through. So I did readings for the whole year, for the month of January, and for New Year's Day. And there was a lot of conflict and drama that was coming through with the end of the year and the holidays. So you could go back and check out those readings if you like. I just want to say thanks for joining the channel. The readings here aren't arranged according to a date or zodiac sign. They're all kind of timeless, and they're arranged according to storyline. So just FYI, I started doing this for myself really because I have been on like hiatus with a family emergency, and so this has been really helpful for me too. And but lo and behold, the channel's been getting a lot of traffic lately, so that's kind of beautiful in a way that this like healing hopefully is helping other people too. So thank you. I'm caring full time for someone who has dementia, and I myself am a vegan cheesemaker, so I'm not really aspiring to be a tarot reader. I'm just doing this out of the joy of tarot, and I have a lot of responsibilities that if you watch this very much, you notice that my mom interrupts the readings a lot. But they say that people with dementia are tapped into something, you know, which I feel like I'm kind of benefiting from. So long story short, I have really limited time, and I just want to say I really appreciate all the beautiful comments that people have been leaving, and thank you. And I'm sorry if I don't have time to respond. I've literally been doing 24-hour care for someone with dementia for over a year now, which is pretty crazy. So anyways, at the bottom of the deck we have this Page of Swords. So this actually, it can be like kind of like a stalker energy. Like we have a whole thread on the channel called Stalkers with this energy like coming through, but it's sort of like a message of truth or clarity. It's interesting because there's like all these, I've never noticed this about this card before, but there's all these birds here, you know, which come up a lot with the idea of truth, you know, coming out and sort of like into the open and like being accepted, you know. So, but maybe something that somebody doesn't necessarily want to hear, which is interesting because the other cards, we got the Seven of Swords, the Page of Cups, the Page of Pentacles, the Two of Pentacles, and then these two fell out together, which this is really dramatic. We got the Four of Swords and the Tower falling out together, so it's just like, oh my gosh. So yeah, so there's like this kind of, you know, like there's this truth coming out and being told, and it's like a little bit of like it's almost like it's revealing a toxic energy, you know, which makes sense because the next card we have is the Seven of Swords, which is like, this is inherently a card of deception. And, you know, at the heart of deception, it's like you're deceiving yourself and then therefore deceiving people around you, and kind of creating a false reality, you know. So it seems like this is being exposed. I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting from that. It's really interesting. I'm sure that people are going to be upset by me saying this because I'm not intending to be political, but there's like a big scandal erupting today as I'm reading this about these taped conversations with President Trump, talking to the Secretary of State in Georgia, you know, and sort of like revealing that like either there's an intention to deceive people or like he's deceiving himself and conflicted about it, you know, but there is at the root of that conversation, there is like some sort of deception, whether it's like intentional or not, you know. So that's just an example. Don't get mad. People are going to get mad at me for saying that, but it's an example of what that card represents, you know. So I'm not making a judgment either way. But then we have the Page of Cups. So this is like an offering of love, you know, like a message of love like coming through, you know. And we have the Page of Pentacles, which is like a message of like tangible progress. So it's like perhaps by like exposing this deception, we're like paving the way for like just baby steps of progress in like maybe some sort of like reconciliation, and like a tangible way forward are like able to surface, you know, by like exposing this truth, you know. So for example, like with the election, I mean, there's obviously this huge conflict about who's going to be president, and like, you know, like this not acceptance of like this path forward. But by exposing this, it's almost like opening the door that like, okay, it's okay, we can move forward, you know, like things are going to move forward. So it's interesting. And again, like this is an example of what the energies in the cards are saying, because I am sure that I'm going to get like attacked for saying for saying this and using that as an example, but I'm just, you know, I'm just reading the cards, you know. So then we have the Two of Pentacles. So this is a card of change, you know, like whether this reality is true or not, like we have to move forward in one way or the other. And so this card sort of suggests that like things are going to change, you know. And then that's followed by the Tower, which is like a huge abrupt change that's like very dramatic, you know, and the Four of Swords, which this is like a card of like sort of reflecting. And it's a card of one of my favorite readers out there who you should check out is Soul Source Tarot, and it's Jennifer, and she always reads this card as the end of an idea or a situation, you know. So like some situation is coming to an end and change is happening, and we're starting to see the very, very beginnings of a way forward through this situation. By exposing whatever this is. So, very interesting. But, you know, again, it's not going to be without drama. Like, for sure dramatic. Okay, so then, the next thing, I go to the Mystical Shaman, which is kind of like my favorite deck. And I have the book here so you can see this deck. And I'm going to pull those cards. But at the bottom, I got the Arrow, which is interesting because this was a really prominent energy in the New Year reading, which I'll link here, about starting with a clean slate. But the Arrow is a card of, interestingly enough, being in alignment with the truth and with the higher good and the empowerment that comes from that. Because it's like when you're in alignment with that, it's like when you pull your arrow and release it into the universe, your arrow is going to hit the mark because you're in alignment with something bigger than yourself and something that has like divine power. So That's the underlying energy. Okay, so then when I go to the other cards, we got the rainbow, the hummingbird, lightning, the Andean cross, and many pass. So this is really interesting because this does speak to a dramatic reading. I mean, these cards are kind of on the same page in certain ways. I mean, the reading, I mean, there's a similar intention behind the meanings of the cards. But so the rainbow, it speaks to being in alignment, and like the rainbow kind of represents sort of like your chakras and like all of your energy, you know. So it kind of speaks to like, you know, I was talking in yesterday's reading about the river runs through it, and there's this like energy that like flows with us, flows through us and is connected to all that is. And it's like when you are in alignment with the highest good, with God's intentions, with the universe, however you sort of relate to that experience, you're going to be like propelled forward towards your destiny, because it's just like the energy is like flowing through you unimpeded. I mean, there's been all these messages coming through at the end of the year and with the new year about just like all this healing of these sort of like internal obstacles caused by like our own distortions of how we see the world. And by healing those distortions, we like open up our flow so that we can meet our destiny. I mean, that's kind of what this card speaks to. And it's interesting because it's like we have all this energy flowing through this bird, you know, and then again, the next card we have is the hummingbird. And the message with this card is, it's like, it's easy to take the hummingbird for granted because it's kind of like this small little bird, you know, and so you wouldn't really think, it's like you're not really on first glance worried about being caught in a dark alley with a hummingbird because it's just this tiny little bird. But actually, the hummingbird is like fierce and like will actually go to great lengths to like protect its home and its territory. And the hummingbird, despite its being small, can like travel like really far distances and overcome crazy obstacles to get to where it needs to go. So like the message with the hummingbird is, despite whatever circumstance might be before you, you have the support of the divine behind you, you know. So like it's time to like take a bold move and like step into your destiny, because this little bird is fierce and it will fight, you know, for whatever its rights are, you know. So I mean, that's kind of what this is speaking to. So it's just sort of like, for example, in the case of the like truth bomb that's going around with the like tapes, you know, like people are comparing it to like Watergate, you know. So whether we're talking about Watergate or we're talking about the current circumstance, because again, I'm gonna obviously ruffle some feathers and upset people by speaking to the specifics of the situation, but I'm really speaking to like what the cards are saying. And it's just sort of like there's this person in this great position of power that's trying to like put forward this outcome, you know, and there's like someone who's like in much less authority who's having to kind of like stand their ground and speak their truth to power, you know. And so like that's kind of the situation that I'm speaking to. Like this hummingbird is fierce, even if it is like this sweet little dainty little bird, you know. Like in certain circumstances, you know, like the Secretary of State that stood up to the president with his truth, and it was like, this is my truth and this is what I'm going to stick to. Like he was like standing in his own power by doing that. And that's like a fierce move, you know, because like a lot of people are not brave, in that way, you know. So, but this card speaks to like that kind of fierce bravery, you know, and this being a moment for that. So again, like, I'm not trying to make any kind of political statements. I'm just speaking to situations that demonstrate what the cards are saying. Okay, so then we have like the lightning card. So this is a card of like an awakening, you know, so a tower moment where it's just sort of like light is being shed on a certain circumstance and it's kind of like blowing it up, you know. So it's just sort of like the truth is out there, and like not everyone might be ready to hear it, but like it's no longer, you can't deny it. Like it's just, it's out there. It's going to change the situation. It's going to change the way we see it. It's going to change everything, whether we like it or not, and however we're aligned with it or not. Like it doesn't matter. Like the universe is in control, or God's in control, you know, like we are not, you know. And so like that power, that ultimate power, you know, which is, it's higher than the president, it's higher than the Pope, it's higher than everyone, you know. It's being like demonstrated. And this is forcing us to like go through a doorway into a new era, you know. It's, things are changing. Like we cannot go back to how things were in the past. Like whether we like it or not, once this truth is unveiled, like we can only go forward, you know. And then we have many paths. So this speaks to being in alignment with something that's like a purpose that's larger than yourself. So the example that's given in with this card is like these two stonemasons, and they're both laying stones down, you know, and one person asks, you know, one stonemason, like, what are you doing? And he says, you know, I'm laying stones, you know. But when you ask the guy next to him who's doing the same thing, he says, his answer is that he's building a cathedral, you know. So he has become part of something larger than himself, and in doing so, he's kind of like empowered himself. So, you know, example with the Secretary of State, you know, it's just sort of like his truth is in alignment with something larger than himself. So even though he's like many layers of power below, this exposure of this truth is kind of aligning him with something that's bigger than his own personal power, you know. And so that's what those cards speak to. So it's like, wow, this is really, really interesting. Like, I mean, the cards are speaking to some toxic situation that's being exposed, and it's going to cause like a huge shakedown. And it's like almost like a line being drawn in the sand. Like, whereas before this truth is exposed, you know, like people have kind of like chosen their teams, you know, not knowing like what the outcome of all this was going to be. Well, after this line gets drawn in the sand, you know, like it's going to kind of like make or break people depending on like which team you chose, like before the truth came out, you know. So it's just like, it's kind of like a great leveler. Like this is it's a make or break moment. So pretty wild. Okay, so then the final deck, I went to the Urban Tarot, and when I picked the bottom of that, I got Cruelty at the bottom. So this is a card of like fear and anxiety. It's a card, like what I'm getting here is abuse of power, you know, like that's what I'm getting in this specific circumstance. And so this is the underlying circumstance, and what's being exposed. So okay, so one thing I wanted to just touch on is when I look at the bottom, the cards at the bottom of the deck, it's interesting because they're all they're all kind of like swords. I mean, we've got the arrow, we've got this page of swords, and we've got this cruelty card. And it's like, it's interesting the story the three of these tell, because this speaks to kind of like exposing something toxic, and this speaking to like an abusive situation, you know, so like this abusive situation being exposed, and meanwhile someone's like truth is gonna like hit its mark, you know. So really interesting. I mean, this really speaks to exposure and a kind of a turning point where, you know, some sort of situation, you know, for the last couple of months, there's been like a lot of storylines about an oppressive situation that was like holding someone back. And this really speaks to kind of like a turnaround with respect to a situation like that, you know. But, you know, when I go underneath the rainbow, you know, so this is someone who's like in alignment, you know, someone whose arrow is going to hit the mark. And underneath that, we have, this is so cool, we have the Hangman and we have the Eon. So, I mean, this speaks to like someone who's sort of taking a step back and getting perspective, and like maybe someone whose perspective is being turned upside down, you know, because maybe they're not actually looking at it the right way, you know. But it's interesting that it comes out with the Eon, because this is a card of karmic reckoning. So, I mean, this speaks to like maybe someone like having to make a sacrifice to move forward, or someone getting perspective on a situation. But whatever that situation is, like, it's karmic and it's time, you know. So maybe whatever truth is being exposed from this deception is like opening up a moment for this person to finally move forward towards their destiny, because it's been holding them back, you know. And then we have this fierce warrior hummingbird that's been, you know, kind of like fighting against the odds. And underneath that card we have completion, and we have the Ace of Swords. So it's like the truth is finally coming out, and that's causing like an evolution from whatever the circumstance was, you know, that was maybe holding them back. You know, this truth on this deception is what's allowing the evolution, you know, for them to go towards this cup of love, you know. So it's interesting because we have this bird like that's moving towards its destiny, and then it goes into this hummingbird, which is like this totally fierce warrior spirit that's kind of like unleashed on the world, you know. And then we have lightning, you know, so this is kind of like the truth is like enlightening. It's like beyond the truth being exposed, like it's causing a total shakedown in everyone's reality, you know. And underneath that we have truce, and we have the Empress. So the birth of a new situation, and sort of like a ceasefire, you know. I mean, this is kind of like the United Nations General Assembly, but we're like coming to some sort of agreement on what this new beginning is, and like are now able to see a tangible way forward, because this truth is like lighting the way, you know. And then we have this wounded warrior, the Fortitude card. So this person who's like fought through all this crazy circumstance and has just been like beaten down, run through the ringer. They're just like ready to give up, but they're like fighting because they really believe in what they're doing, you know. And we have this person with the Ace of Cups, so like this new beginning in love, you know, like things are turning around for this person. And that falls right on top of this change card, and it falls right under this Andean cross. So for whatever this situation has been that's been oppressing this person and causing them to have to just go through the ringer, they're walking through the doorway to this new beginning. And then we have, you know, we have this tower, the end of this era, and the beginning of this new era. And then we have like this many paths. So it's like speaks to like a divergence, you know, because we have the Hierophant and we have the Ace of Discs. So this speaks to like I mean, I almost see this like as a judge, like making a judgment or a community, you know, but this is like an institution that's making a judgment and revealing this brand new opportunity, this new way forward, you know, but it's like, it's almost like there's kind of two paths, you know, depending on, like I was talking earlier about how there's this line being drawn in the sand, and we've already kind of told our positions, you know, before the line was drawn, like whether we knew it or not. And then depending on which side of the line we fall on, like we're going to have a different path. We're either laying stones or we're building a cathedral, depending on how we aligned with the truth, you know, that's being exposed now. So it's like, if you're in alignment with the truth, this beautiful new opportunity is going to come online for you. And if not, it's going to be like a total shakedown moment, you know? I mean, the line has already been drawn in the sand, but the truth, we're still waiting for it to unfold, you know? What your destiny is, if you're going to be laying stones or if you're going to be building a cathedral. Like, it's wild. Like, this is like a crazy reading, but it's a really interesting one, like really climactic, you know. I'm going to the Oracle of Seven Energies, and I'll pick a final card, but it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like, you know, the work's already been done, like the alliances have already, they've already been made, you know, and so it's just sort of like the reckoning, you know, and Santa's going down the list and checking it twice, and you've either been naughty or you've been nice, and like, you can't go back and change it now, like you've already committed to whatever outcome it is, you know. Now is just when we find out what the verdict is, really, you know. It's kind of like when like a crime gets committed, and you know, like you have to go through this process of justice before you find out the verdict, you know, which happens much, much later, but you've already made a commitment one way or the other, you know. So now we're just like, we're just waiting for the score, you know. Okay, oh my gosh. Okay, so we got a tall tale. I'll read you the meaning, but yeah, score is getting settled, and this looks like a big one. Denial, concealing the truth so that you can manipulate and control a situation. Fear-based communication, creating a narrative to hide behind. Not allowing the fear of what others will think to influence your words. Learning to communicate from a place of authenticity. You or someone else is telling a tall tale right now. You always know if a falsehood is spoken because it doesn't feel grounded. When you lie, you get high on an illusory sense of power that is doomed to fail at some point. You feel driven by the fear of exposure, but something makes you stick to your story even though you know it has no substance. Whatever lie we are caught up in isn't as important as the motive for it. Why does anyone lie? Perhaps we don't believe the truth is good enough, or we want to keep doing what we know we shouldn't be doing. Then there is a lie put forth while in denial, such as hiding an active addiction. In this scenario, we may believe our own lies. The tall tale, the white lie, the stretching of the truth, and the blatant fabrication are all about control. The desire for it, the lack of it, the need to maintain it so that we can manipulate the outer world and hide our inner one. Today, ask for the truth. Be willing to pay the price and be okay with the vulnerability your lie is exposing in yourself and others. Transparency is required to get you where you need to go, to be truly empowered, to reveal the strength of what is true and authentic. Any other path leads to a dead end. Remember the saying, the truth will set you free, and get ready to fly unfettered. Oh my gosh, this is so perfect. The truth is going to set someone free. And it's going to bring someone's world crashing down. The line is being drawn in the sand right now. So, oh my gosh, good luck. Be back soon with more messages.